Welcome back to Kai's Tech. In this video, we're going to make a single page application like this. As you can see, it resembles a login screen that you might see on thousands of existing apps out there. To make this app, all you need is a computer and an internet connection. You will need to make a GitHub account, a code space, and get everything set up for app development. If you haven't already, check out lesson 0, where I guide you through the entire process of getting set up. I started making this app by creating a mock-up of it on Canva. This is a web tool that allows you to create conceptual designs of an app before you actually code it up. They have lots of free templates for apps, websites, and lots of other things you can customize. You can drag and drop items, change their color, and generally make it how you want it to look. Using Canva, you can create the entire story of your app, how each screen is laid out, and how they flow together. In the world of apps and web development, there are people who specialize entirely in making mock-ups, front-end engineers who are the first movers of app development. Perhaps you will find this is where your specialty is, or perhaps you'll just dabble in design. I've made quite a few mock-ups using Canva, and it's certainly a lot of fun. It's a very creative experience, but what it can't give us is a functioning app that runs natively on a mobile device. So how do we get from a mock-up to a functioning app? Let's take a step back a minute and look at the app we developed in the first 2 videos. There's some navigation sections at the top and bottom, which we're going to ignore for now. The remainder of the screen is represented by a view component. Within this view, there's another component, a text component. So let's go back and take a look at our single page app that we aim to create in this lesson. What you're looking at currently is actually a mock-up I made from a Canva template. This isn't a real app yet. So if we're going to make this app into an app with React Native, how would we do it? How would we go about it? Well, we need to break it down into boxes, just like our basic app we just looked at. The wider screen area is again defined by a view component. Within this view component, there are actually 3 direct child components. What does that mean? For example, there's a text component creating the app title here. There's another view in the center here, which itself contains child components, which we'll come to, and another view component at the bottom of the screen. Let's look a bit closer at the view component in the middle. It actually contains 4 text components, each styled in different ways. We'll come back to that later. At the bottom here, we have another view component, which again contains 2 child components this time. This time they're arranged in a row rather than a column like in the one above. It's well worth creating a Canva account and heading over to their website. In the comments below, I have linked to the mock-up that I've shown here. You can open it up and you can have a mess around with it, and you can look at the various parts and maybe change something if you like. So how do we go about turning our mock-up into an actual app that we can use on our mobile devices? Let's start by heading over to our code space that we've created over on GitHub. Make sure you're in the main directory of your code space, i.e. not the directory of the app that you created previously. Then we want to create a new app with the command npx create React Native app. Call the app mock2 app. Use the blank template. So now that the app is created, we need to move into its directory. cd mock2 app. Now we'll start up the development server with our usual command, yarn start -- tunnel. If you remember from lesson 2, I actually taught you how to make a bit of a shortcut for this, but don't worry if you haven't done it. And then, of course, scan the QR code to load the app up on your mobile device. Let's head back over to Canva for a minute and load up the mock-up that I've linked to in the comments below. Click on the app itself, the mock-up itself, and then you'll see this color here. Click that, background color, and then you can see highlighted here the color that it actually is that's actually chosen. And right here you'll see this code, this 6-letter code after a hash. That is the code, it's called a hex code, that represents the color that's chosen here as the background. Let's copy that. Now let's head back over to our code spaces. Open up app.js in your mock2app app. Within here we're going to see the view component. And within the style definition we need to add a new row. Let's do background color. And then in inverted commas, let's paste in that hex code that we got from Canva. You should see the background of the app now turn to the correct color. So we're making some good progress. Let's head back over to our Canva again. So what are we making next? So there's a title at the top of the mockup, My App. Let's try creating that next. If we remember, that is going to be a text component. Back over on our code space, we'll notice that we actually do already have a text component inside of our view. Let's change that to the text that we actually want. So in our mockup, it's called My App, all one word. If we have a look back over on our mockup, we can see that the color of the text of the title is actually the hex for all white, and also it's bold. So we head back over to our code space. Let's create a style definition here. Style equals, and then there's 2 sets of curly brackets within each other. And then let's go for color. That's going to change the color of the text. And we can just put white, or you can put hash and then all Fs. It's up to you. It does the same thing. The title is actually bold, so let's go for font weight, and then we want bold. And then finally, I think we need to make this title a little bit bigger, so let's go for font size, and I think it's probably about 70. You could try having a mess around with different sizes, but maybe it's about 70. Now the other thing that's wrong at the moment, of course, is the title is actually in the wrong place. It's in the middle of the screen, whereas we want it at the top. Don't worry about that for now. We'll sort that out later. So next up we have this central view component, which, as I said earlier, has several child text components within it. So how do we code this up? So let's start coding up our view, our middle view. So let's make a bit of space here first. Let's make some white space in between to make sure everything's clean and easy to read. Just make sure everything's at the right level of indentation. So this is inside of that, so it should be indented a bit. It just makes it easier to read a bit more. Right, so let's do another view here. View. And it's got opening and closing tag. So let's put some stuff inside it. So as we said about our Canva mockup, we've got 4 text components within our central view. So let's do a couple of texts here. Text. And then we can copy that 4 times. And then after we've done that, we can essentially just copy and paste the text from our Canva mockup. Now we could put our style definitions here in each text component, just as we've done above for our text component and our views. But how about we move style definition somewhere else so that we don't have, they're not cluttering up the screen. So to do that, let's create a new file here in our new app. Click new file, and then let's type in styles.js. It's a new file which is going to contain all our styles. So let's open that up. So inside this file, we're going to make an import statement at the top here. Import curly brackets style sheet from React Native. It should autocomplete to that. Now let's say export const styles equals style sheet dot create, and then we need a curved bracket and then a curly bracket. So let's put some styles in here. If we head back over to app.js for a sec, we've got this style here. Copy everything inside and including the first curly brackets. So that represents the sort of home sheet. So let's head over to styles, and then on a new line here, let's call it home screen, and then just paste, and that will give us our first style. So now over here we need to add import, and then in curly brackets styles. Oh, and there we go. It's auto completed from .styles. Great. So now, instead of having all of this definition here, we can go like this, and then we can type styles dot home screen. And then now if you have the development server running and you have the app loaded on your phone, you should see that replacing the style definition with styles.home screen has no discernible effect on the app, because it's just getting the same thing from somewhere else. So we can do the same thing for this one, for the title. So let's copy that again, and then over here let's make a new object in our style sheet. So do a comma after the last entry, and then let's call it title, and then paste. Then if we head back over to our app.js and we replace that with styles.title, it's the same thing again. Now if you look back over on our Canva, you can see that the input boxes in the central view are they're white, and they sort of have rounded corners, and the text is a sort of greyish colour. So let's create a style object for that. So let's call it input box. So the one parameter we're going to put for our input box style is background color white, because our little boxes are white. Okay. So now that we have a style for our input box, let's copy the name of that a sec, and let's head over to app.js and let's tell it style is equal to styles dot input box. So one thing you'll notice is wrong is the white around the text isn't quite the right size. It should be about 80% of the width of the screen. So let's fix that. So to do it, we need to create another style definition here for the view around the text. So let's call it middle box, and all we have to say in here is width 100%. It's going to be 100% of its parent. That needs to be in inverted commas. And then down here in the input box, we want to put width 80%, because it's 80% of its parent. So It's 80% of its parent, which is 100%, and then that's 100% of its parent, and so on. And then we just need to head back over to app.js and change the styles of this. So style equals styles dot middle box, and then you should see we also need to align items in the center as well. Now you might have noticed at this point that all of our text components inside this middle view are sort of squished together. There's not much space between them. They're not laid out quite as we want. So how do we figure out how to lay out our text components as we want, with spacing and all the rest of it? It's at this point I want to introduce you to this website. It's reactnative.dev/docs/layout-props. So I found this website great for figuring out how to lay things out in React Native apps. So on this website you'll see there's a little box here with 3 squares in it. And these squares can represent anything in your app, text components or views or whatever you want. But all you have to do is click these buttons here, and they change various style components to do with layouts. So let's try and get these squares to line up as we want our text components to line up as they appear in the mockup. So let's change the flex direction. So they're in a column now, just like on our mockup. That's good. And let's change the justify content. We want it like that. We want them sort of evenly spaced. Or space evenly might be even better. Right, and then we want to change the align items to get them in the middle. There we go. That's exactly what we want. We want column, space evenly, and center. So let's have a look at the style definition of middle box. So we've already got align items to be center. Then we want to change the flex direction to be column. And then we want the justify content to be space evenly. And finally, we need to set the height of the view in the middle, and let's call that, it looks to me about 25% of the height of the overall view. So let's put 25%. So it's starting to take shape, isn't it? It's starting to look right, but looks like we've still got a bit of work left to do to get it just as it is on the mock-up. So what else can we do? So the font is looking a bit small to me, so let's try font size 15. Now do you notice the white boxes the text is in is very sort of squished up to the text itself. There's not much gap between the text and the surrounding box. So how do we fix that? We fix that with something called padding. So what is padding? Simply put, padding is just the empty space within a cell, within a component. So here it's just the space around the text. Related is something called margins. So that's the space around the component, which is empty space. We'll come to that in a bit, but right now we need padding. So how do we implement padding in our style? So it's as simple as putting in our text box, input box, padding, let's call it 5 to start off with. Okay, that's added a bit of padding. Now the interesting thing about padding is it doesn't have to be the same in all directions. So it looks to me like the padding in the mock-up is maybe a bit more in the sort of vertical direction. So let's do padding vertical 10. Yeah, that looks better. Actually, I think the padding on the left isn't quite enough. So let's do padding left 15. Now be aware that this is effectively overwrote this padding, so it was applying padding on the left and everywhere else of 5, and now the padding on the left is actually 15. It's overridden it. Now, in terms of the style of these text components, there's still a couple of things missing. If you look very closely on the mock-up, there are very thin black borders around them. So we'll need to implement that. And connected to that, the corners of these boxes are also sort of curved in to make it a sort of nice sort of oval shape. So how do we implement those changes? So in the style definition here, let's add border width, and it's a very thin border, so let's go for 0.5. So that's added a very thin border. Next up, we want to change the radius of the corner, so that's border radius, and let's give it a value of about 20. So that's going to curve in our corners. Now if you notice, there's a sort of overflow on the corners. The color is still leaking out of the corners, so let's get rid of that by typing overflow hidden. There we go. Excellent. Now they're the sort of shape they are on the mock-up. Now you'll notice, if you've got the app loaded up on your mobile device, that if you're tapping the input fields, you can't actually type anything in. So when I said these are text components, I kind of lied. They shouldn't be text components. They should be text input components. So let's make our text boxes interactive so we can actually type things in. So to do that, on the app.js file, at the top here in our input statement, after text, let's put text input. Now copy that, and then replace the word text here with text input. Same with the closing tag, and the same thing for the one below as well, because we want that to be a text input too. Okay. Now one other final thing we need to do: highlight the text in between the opening and closing tag and cut that. Then over here, before style, type placeholder, and then in these inverted commas put that text. Same thing for the password. Cut that, and over here, placeholder equals that. So now we have some text boxes which we can actually click on and enter values into, which is great. Now as for the login button below the text input fields, I've created another style which is pretty much a copy and paste of the input box, but I've changed the background color to the background color of the button. You can get that off the Canva. I've changed the text color to white, and then I've got the text in the middle of the button by using text align center. Bolden the text with that, and that's about it. Oh, and don't forget, of course, to in app.js to add it to the appropriate text component. So let's compare our mockup and our app where we're up to. So in terms of the middle bit, we are getting kind of close. I would say the login button maybe has a bit too much padding vertically in it, so we can get rid of the vertical padding in login button, and that will sort of squish the button a bit more. Now one other thing, it looks like there should be more space between the login button and the input box above it. So to increase the gap between the top of the login button and the text input, we're going to use margins. So in the login button style object, we might as well put it after the padding. Let's put margin, and we only want to increase the margin of the top, so let's go for margin top, and then let's go for about 10. So something I've done here to make the style sheet a bit clearer is this login button style object was getting a bit long, so I've just broken it down into different lines. Right, so in terms of the middle view, we've just got one thing left to do. That's turn the forgot button text to white. So let's make another object here called white text, and all we have to do in there is color white, and then obviously back on app.js we have to tell it to use that style. So style equals styles.white text. So in terms of content, now we've just got the bottom view to complete, and if you've been following the tutorial so far, you're probably going to find this last bit quite easy, because it's going to be using skills we've already learned. So let's define another view here. View. Okay, and then let's put some stuff in it. So looking at the mockup, we've got two text components. So let's do a text and another one. And then once again, we just have to copy and paste the text in from the mockup. Now, we just need to change the style of both of these to make them white. So the way I see it, the style of this text component is the same as this one, so we can pretty much just copy and paste that in. It's just white text. There's nothing else special about it. But this one, it looks to me like the text is a little bigger and it's bold. So let's make one more style definition here. We'll call it sign up. Yep, and you can probably guess what I'm going to put in here. Color white again. As before, we're going to put font weight to bold. And I think the size could be a little bigger as well. Let's go with font size. I'd say it's about 20. And then once again, we have to set the style definition here. Styles dot sign up. Okay, so the other problem is, of course, that the layout is wrong for the bottom view. They're stacked in a column, whereas we want them in a row. So taking another look at this website, the sort of default layout of the squares, it uses the flex direction row. So let's try using that. So let's head back over to styles.js and create a new object. So let's call this bottom box would be fine. And then let's just do flex direction row. So then if we set the style of this view, style is equal to styles dot bottom box. Okay, that to me is not quite looking right. So it looks like the sign up word is below the line where it should be. So I've had a mess around with it, and I think the best way to solve this is to do align items flex end. Yep, and that makes it look as it should in the mockup. So looking at the app now and comparing with the mockup, it's looking like we're getting pretty damn close. The one and only thing left is to stop the three parent components being stuck together. We need them spaced out as they are in the mockup. So with the skills you've learned in this lesson, you can probably guess for yourself how to do it. you might want to pause the YouTube video here and try and figure it out. It's just one very small change which needs to be made. And if you look on the layout props website, you'll find the answer. So how do we do it? So on this website, the layout props one, I've arranged the boxes as we want them in the mock-up. So they're all in a column in the middle. So it is of course in the home screen style object that we want to put these, because that is the style of our ultimate parent view. So we don't have a flex direction yet, so let's put a flex direction column. Justify content, we want to be space around, and our align items is already center. So that's everything. So that's it. You've created an app from a Canva mockup. Well done. If we compare the final app against the original mockup, you can see it isn't perfect. There's still a few things which could be refined. Maybe you could have a go at refining it yourself. Maybe change a few of the style parameters or other parameters in app.js. This has been a very challenging lesson, and you've learned a lot of new skills. If you've managed to follow all the way through to the end, congratulations, well done. If you haven't already, this is a great time to make a Git commit to save your work, and in the next lesson we'll be learning some more skills. See you then. Thank you.